Fantastic. So good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us for this virtual open house on 424 Churchill Avenue North. I think I know most of you who are attending this evening. My name is Jeff Leeper. I'm the city councilor for the neighborhood. Sorry, I assume we have a city planner. Kirsten, you're the city planner on this file.
Yes.
And then, so Kirsten Nietzsche is the city planner on this file, who's ultimately going to have to make a recommendation to the planning committee as to whether or not to adopt this. And along the way, she'll have the opportunity to talk to the developer about changes that she'd like to see in order to get herself in a position where she would be able to recommend to planning committee that they vote in favor of approving this. And I'm also joined this evening by Stephanie Chevalier Crockett. Stephanie is my planning assistant for a little while longer. She'll be moving over to work with me on larger planning and housing committee files, and we'll be hiring a new person to work with us in the ward on the many rezonings that we have. So we are taking a look this evening at 424 Churchill Avenue North. I'm the developers team, who will introduce themselves, are going to talk to us about why they feel or what changes from the existing zoning they are seeking and why they feel that those are justified. I don't expect that this is going to be one of our more active files in the ward. They're not seeking a lot more than what the zoning allows, and given recent changes in the official plan, changes in direction from the province, roughly something like this, I assume, would be voted by the committee to be approved. But let's hear what they have to say. I'm going to turn it over to Steph, who will let us know how the evening is going to unfold.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff. So I'll keep it pretty short and sweet for everyone. I'm going to assume a lot of people know the way that we do the housekeeping for this, but just as a refresher for anyone who might not know, we're going to begin with a pretty short presentation by the applicants in attendance. So that's what we're seeing shared on our screen by Photon right now. And they're going to take us through their proposal for about 10, 20 minutes tops. And then immediately after that, we're going to open up the Q&A with everyone. I'm going to keep a speakers list. Typically, we would be going in the Q&A button tonight. Since we're a bit of a smaller crowd, everyone will have a chance to speak and ask the questions audibly if they'd like. I just note that we are recording this meeting and we will be posting it publicly after. So if you prefer not to, show up on that video, or if you prefer not to show your face through video or anything like that, the Q&A function is still there for you. I'll be taking questions there and reading them aloud so everyone can hear it. And that's more or less how we'll proceed. I'll reiterate this after, just in case anyone forgets. Otherwise, we'll be posting this meeting publicly on YouTube afterwards. So if you have any neighbors who are interested in attending and were not able to attend, you'll be able to find that on the Kitchissippi Ward YouTube channel. So if you look up Kitchissippi Ward after this meeting on YouTube, in the next day or two, it'll go up and you probably see it there. If not, you can write our office. So I won't steal too much time from the applicants and too much time out of the Q&A. I'll just go over a bit more once we dive into it. But for now, I think I'll just hand it over to the applicants over at Photon and let them give their presentation.
Great. Thanks so much, Steph. So we're here. My name is Jillian Simpson. I'm with Photon Planning and Design. I'm here with an associate, Lisa Della Rosa, who's helping on this file. On behalf of Churchill Properties Incorporated, we're here with Jenny Tang, the developer, as well as Chris Bennis from Open Plan Architects. As you can see on the screen, the proposal is for an 8-story residential apartment building with 58 residential units facing Churchill Avenue North. It's going to be a high-level presentation. You probably already know the application, the area, so we're mostly here to answer your questions. So the subject site is located 424 Churchill Avenue North, just off of Richmond Road. It's on Churchill Avenue North here, and it's in close proximity to Westboro Station. It's actually within 600 meters of the transit station here with the orange line. You also have Churchill Avenue North is a minor corridor in the official plan. I'll talk about this a little later. You've got Byron Avenue here, Danforth Avenue here, and steps away from a Main Street corridor, Richmond Road. I'm going to turn it over quickly to the client, Jemmy Tang. They're the owner and developer, to talk about the historic context and the vision for the site.
Thanks, Jillian, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. My name is Jemmy, and I, along with my husband, David, will be spearheading this project. Unfortunately, David is not able to attend as he's on parent duty this evening. So I'd like to start by thanking Chris from Open Plan Architects, Lisa and Jillian and her team at FO10, and all our consultants who have put their efforts together to create what I believe to be a beautiful addition to Westboro. So I'd like to take a moment to introduce ourselves and provide a little background on the property. This property has been in David's family for about 3 decades, where it was operated as a laundry business by his parents. Unfortunately, David's father passed away in 2012 from cancer, and the family sold the business shortly afterwards. But they kept the property and the land. It has always been important for their family to do something great with Churchill property in honor of their father's legacy. Churchill Properties, which is owned by my family, will be developing this project. We are an owner-operator of over 500,000 square feet of properties in Canada. Our aim is not only to provide a new home for the members of the community, but also to create something beautiful and long-lasting that will add to the uniqueness of Westboro area. This property will always have a special place in our family's heart. We hope that this new chapter will create wonderful adventures that will live on through the memories of the occupants.
Great, thanks so much, Jenny. So just for some site context, looking here from Churchill Avenue, you can see the subject site. It's currently occupied by a 2-story building with a parking lot to the north of the site here. And as Jenny had noted, it's currently vacant. And further, looking northwest, you can see from Churchill Avenue and Byron down to Richmond Road here. I just want to make note of the overhead wires, which I'll talk about further when we come to the zoning section, but this is the current context. So policy context, it's within the inner urban transect of the official plan, and it's located on a minor corridor, Churchill Avenue. And it steps to a Main Street corridor, Richmond Road here. So the surrounding neighborhood is designated as a neighborhood designation, with an evolving overlay. So hoping to promote gradual change to an increased density within a mixed use environment. Main Street corridors provide residents a full range of services within walking distance to create that 15-minute neighborhood. Our 8-story building is below the below the permitted height of the official plan, for 9 stories on a Main Street corridor. Further, the subject sites within the Richmond Road and Westboro secondary plan, which currently has a maximum of 6 stories, as you can see here in the orange. However, it does note that heights of 7 to 9 stories are appropriate. Since it's part of the Westboro Main Street corridor, where the official plan amendment is being sought to increase the height to 8 stories. And you can see the surrounding character permits 7 to 9 stories. Further, the current zoning, it's traditional Main Street with a maximum height of 24 meters. It's also subject to a mature neighborhood overlay. And as I'll discuss in the next slide, we're proposing to increase the height, increase the front yard setback, and decrease the corner side yard setbacks. So if you look here at the slide, it shows the site plan, and I've highlighted where we're looking to change the zoning. So 8 stories, increasing the maximum height to 27.5 meters to accommodate that 8-story building. There is a variance in the height due to the grade differences on Danforth. It's quite steep. So the average grade is defined in the bylaw. But the building appears as a 7-story building from Churchill Avenue. So, and this can be accommodated within that permitted 24 meters, as it's about 3 meters per floor. We're also looking to increase the front yard setback from 2 to 3.4 meters to meet Hydro Ottawa's requirement to have above the 15-meter mark. Those overhead wires I showed you earlier is for this reason. The zoning does have a minimum maximum setback, but we have to set the building back for those hydro lines. We're also looking to reduce the corner side yard setbacks from 3 meters to 1 meter at the southern property line at Byron and to 0.2 meters at the northern property line at Danforth Avenue. This maximizes the width of the site due to that hydro line increases for the front yard setback. Oh, sorry. And for some quick site statistics, you're looking at an 8-story building, as I mentioned, 58 units. There's a range of units. We include 2 bachelor, 41 bedroom units, 10 1-bedroom plus den units, and 6 2-bedroom units. There's 2 levels of underground parking accessible from Danforth Avenue, 26 residential parking spaces with 5 visitor spaces. And there's 50 internal weather protected bicycle spaces as well. Amenity space is through private balconies as well as communal amenity space indoors and at the rear. I'm going to flip it over to Chris and he can discuss some of the architectural context. Chris, if you want to just tell me to change the slides.
Thank you. Yeah, that sounds great. As long as everybody can hear me, I'll talk a little bit about the context and why the building looks the way that it does. Stylistically, what aligned most with our client's vision for the building was a classical language, and there are certainly references in Ottawa for this. The Beaux-Arts building on the right, for instance. So this is what we tried to achieve as a mass and in terms of the building's expression. Next slide, please. Fitting into our context and creating a vital streetscape were also goals for us. The city guidelines are good ones and they set these criteria already, but we would have done this anyway. We know how important these are to the success of the architecture. And to that end, we incorporated large street front windows, higher ground floor, and worked human scaled elements into the podium levels. We also decided to animate the street with quality planting beds, awnings, and other detail elements that would make walking on the street beside the building feel more pleasant. And just as we see in other buildings in town. So if we go to the next slide, please. Thank you. The other thing is, we're using a similar architectural treatment, ordered facade composition, permanent materials like masonry and precast concrete, and expressive elements such as curved corners and cornices that can all be found nearby. And it's in that way that we've tried to fit in. Next slide, please. So as Jillian had mentioned, there's actually 2 parking levels proposed, accommodating up to 31 cars. You see them here. There's also a level below the entrance level, above the parking, which we don't have a slide of. And this one, because the grade drops sharply down on the site, this one will appear partially under grade and partially exposed to the Danforth Street as well. And so there will be units across that facade, and the balance of that floor will be taken up with amenity space, approximately 1,800 square feet of common amenity, some bike storage, and supportive spaces. Next slide, please. On the ground floor, the lobby will have 2 access points, one off of Byron and the other one off of Churchill. This is designed so that the architecture engages with the streets and creates a vital pedestrian-oriented character, as I talked about before. And although there will not be any commercial space here, the height of the ground floor and the large windows and awnings will give it that feeling and will allow it to integrate harmoniously with the mixed use buildings down from it. And next slide, please. The typical floors will have a variety of unit sizes and types of good quality and functional layouts. And next slide, please. And here's the building section. The only thing I would point out here, as long as it's crisp enough to read, is where the grade is. So as I just mentioned, the grade does descend sharply. So this is a cut through the long portion of the building. Let's say through the main entrance at Churchill, which would be on the right-hand side in this picture. And you can see that the grade is up at the ground level. If anybody can make it out, the elevation is 75.92. And my point here is just that from the vantage point of Churchill, for the most part, unless you're quite a bit down the hill, looking up at it, and from the vantage point of Byron Street, this is going to be perceived as a 6-story building with a 7th level slightly set back top of it. And it's only from the Danforth Avenue side that this will appear as a 7.5-story building with that setback penthouse level on top of that. So in conclusion, it transitioned well, in my opinion, to the neighborhoods to the south, which are a bit lower. So it just doesn't perceive, it's not perceived as a high building. So it fits in well. Okay, that's the only point I want to make on this one, and that concludes my comments. Thank you.
And that concludes my comments.
Okay.
So thank you very much, everybody, and over to you, Steph.
Of course. So I'll just reiterate sort of how the Q&A will go. I'm just about to send a request to everyone who's the new sort of handful of attendees to join as panelists. I'd only ask if you accept, just stay muted for now. And the way we'll go is I'll just ask anyone to raise their hand if they'd like to speak, and then it'll be your turn to go. And if you'd prefer not to speak audibly, or if you prefer not to show up on screen, the Q&A is open and I can read your question aloud from there. I'll just say, so far we don't have any hands up or any questions in the Q&A. So I'll give us kind of an awkward 15-20 seconds for anyone to put up their hands or come with a question. So I'm seeing Deb. Deb, I'll promote you, and if you'd like to go first, feel free. I'm also seeing Jeff. Deb, if you're speaking right now, we can't hear you. Sorry, I'll give you a couple seconds just to see if it's just a finicky microphone. If not, I think we'll just jump to Jeff, if that's fine for now.
Yeah, because Deb doesn't show as muted, but I assume she's having some issues with the mic. And I'm sorry if I missed it during the presentation. Where do the hydro wires go? So the render that we're looking at right now doesn't show hydro wires. Are you proposing to bury those, or are those still on the street?
No, those would, if you can hear me, Councillor, those would remain. They're just not represented. There would be hydro lines in front of the building on Churchill, as well as to the north of the building on Danforth.
Okay, thank you.
We had looked at, putting them underground, but hydro wouldn't allow that.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be interested more in hearing more about that, but at some other time. This strikes me as a natural opportunity to bury the lines, but anyways.
So thanks, Jeff. Deb, I'll ask you to unmute and we'll see if this works. So Deb, I've sent you a request to just unmute. Oh,
Can you hear me?
we can hear you. There we go. Sorry about that.
I have a few questions. I live on Everett, not too far away from this corner. And one thing I've noticed that there's quite a bit of traffic, especially around 5 o'clock. And when the cars are lining up, this was less so this summer when we had the construction on Byron. But the corner of Churchill and Byron, what happens is because there is no advanced signal so people can turn onto Byron, usually going south, they end up cutting through on Everett or on Tweedsmuir. So I was just wondering, this could be a very busy section with 58 more people or 24 more people living in this community, and we're not too far from Churchill. And so I am concerned about the level of traffic. Will there be a turning lane added to this area? Will there or be an advanced signal, just so that we can deal with the increase of traffic that will be generated?
I'm happy to take that question. So with this application, we did submit a traffic study that did talk to the increase to traffic at peak hours, and unfortunately our transportation consultant's not here to speak specifically to it, but the amount of added traffic that this building will produce is not, we're not every unit gets a parking spot. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think we're at 31 parking spaces, 5 of which are visitor or
That's correct. Yeah.
So it's not intended to have people here. With the promotion of multimodal transportation is here with providing the bike parking, and the proximity to transit allows us to have that ratio of parking. And so again, the transportation study does support this, not indicating the need for a traffic lane, but we did this morning actually get the first round of comments from the city, and there is some traffic related ones in there. So those will go back to the traffic consultant just to make sure that everything is checked on that.
And can I ask when the traffic study was done?
So the traffic study follows the city's guidelines with regards to, they have to monitor at certain peak hours at certain times of the year, and they do factor in background traffic. Again, I'm not a traffic engineer, but it is available online as part of the submission package for you to have a closer look at it. We can always follow up with you specifically if you have a specific question about the timing and what was factored in. I'm happy to have the transportation consultant reach out and provide those details.
Sure, because if it was done in the last year, I don't think that was kind of like a normal year for that corner.
Understood. Yeah, there are requirements, like there is a terms of reference that traffic studies that are submitted have to meet with specifics to the timing and when they've looked at the background work. So I'm assuming our traffic consultant followed those rules, but if not, then we'll be having to adjust those for sure.
Okay, thanks.
Deb, if you'd like to ask your other questions too, feel free, as we're still collecting some questions.
Right now, I have 2 questions. One is related to the fact that this building is being built fairly at the top of a hill. And what you're adding is like a rather large concrete block. And so I'm just wondering about water. Let's say if we have a major rain event, which we seem to be having more extreme weather incidences, is there some kind of design element that's being added to catch the water so it won't kind of funnel down Danforth and into the businesses and things? Because
Yeah,
right now you have like trees and things to absorb some of that water.
Yeah, it's a very good point, certainly. And the stormwater management plan has to take into consideration this very thing. On this building, there will be rooftop water storage. So any of the water that accumulates on the surfaces of the building has to be controlled in terms of how quickly it gets output into the storm system in the city. And so it sort of happens over a gradual period of time. So I think that concern is addressed. And of course, with respect to, our own building that we're proposing here, it has to be elevated enough off grade that the water would not be a concern for the building itself as well. So it will cover both of those concerns, certainly.
I have one other question, is that right now, currently, there's quite a bit of, I'm not saying they're beautiful trees, but there's a lot of green along that corridor currently. So in the summertime, there is a bit of a cooling effect because it's not high density. How does this design, how is it able to mitigate some of the concrete, the amount of density? It looks, to be honest with you, it looks kind of, I'm a gardener, and right now the design looks rather antiseptic. And if you're walking along that place, at 1 o'clock in the afternoon in July, you're going to fry.
Yeah, so we've gone through some length to actually incorporate planting beds, which are illustrated on that shot that you're looking at now. So it's our hope to landscape it as much as we can. Trees are something that we want to see happen there. I think the city shares that view. There are hydro lines to contend with, so we'll have to work within the guidelines that hydro has around that. There will also be, in terms of the west side, there is a terrace over the parking levels because the building does not extend all the way back to the west. There's 7.5 meter setback. And that would also be landscaped. And the roof itself, would be done in a light colored membrane. That this is, sort of standard practice now is to provide 2-ply membranes which are light in color and therefore reflect some of that heat. But I don't know that it will.
What about the south side of the building?
But the other thing that I would just add is that by doing this sort of higher density intervention on a site like that, we are getting a lot of spaces for individuals to live where otherwise they might be living in houses that would be more spread out and would have a greater impact in that respect. So it may not be exactly what you're looking for, but I think we're trying in terms of the landscape.
I understand what you're saying along the Churchill corridor, but Byron, does that one right at the street, there are no hydro lines.
Yes, exactly. No, you're right about that. And again, we have shown some trees on Byron as well, and the similar treatment in terms of planting beds and that sort of thing. So I think the owner very much wants this to be a good looking building and have a good quality streetscape. So we would be doing those things as much as we can.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Deb. I'm just going to jump to grab a quick question from the Q&A, just straightforward from Anonymous, who asks, will these units be for rent or for sale?
At this point, it is a rental project. The timing of the construction and stuff will dictate that, but we are moving forward. There's no condominium application that's filed at this time, so it would be a rental building.
Awesome. Thanks, Lisa. And I'll just dive back into the hands up. So the next hands up I saw were Thomas and Brenda, if you'd like to go.
Hello there. Thanks for this meeting. First of all, thanks a lot for the context on the property and for presenting quite an attractive building. We're actually sitting at the corner. We're in the building at 421 Churchill Avenue North. So we're actually literally looking out of the window at Laundryland, which is now boarded up. So this looks like a much more attractive site in the future. Just a couple of questions, living across the street from the site. Number one, what's the remediation plan going to look like? And what's the construction likely to be in terms of blasting, et cetera? Having lived through the Byron, reconstruction this summer, and I think it will continue next summer, just trying to get a sense of, what it would be like to be across the street during the construction process.
Not sure I can talk to the construction of it, but we are required to go through a record of site condition for the lands based on the use, their former use. Because we are building a parking garage, the soils will have to be removed from site and disposed of in a receiving facility that accepts what they call dirty dirt, because there is remnants in the soil that was tested for certain levels of contaminants, and so you can't just do anything with it. We do have to work with our environmental site engineer to make sure that it's done in an appropriate way. So with regards to blasting and how the construction is going to happen, I don't know, Chris can probably talk more to that, but the environmental side of it will be covered and it will be dealt with through the provincial regulations, and the dirt will be removed off site to qualify it as a clean site in order to proceed to a more sensitive use, which is the residential.
Yeah, and as to the construction, it's been a little while since I looked at the geotechnical report, but we do have bedrock that is relatively high or close to the surface. I think that likely they'll use what they call line drilling, and there'll probably be some blasting involved. Yes, certainly they'll take the required mitigation procedures when so doing, but it's something really we won't know until we have a qualified contractor on board to do that scope. But I think it'll certainly be done in accordance with the proper provisions and standards for that type of work. I would also say that because the parking structure comes in at the lower grade, we're not quite have to go down only one level, but it would be close to that. So you're not going to see, a 5-story pit as you do in many other places throughout your neighborhood. So I think that will help. That will help.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Thomas. Going to the next on the list, Sue, if you'd like to speak.
Thank you. I noticed in the planning rationale, this question has to do with the corner side yard setbacks. I'm from the Westboro Community Association, and there was the bylaw states there should be 3 meters. And I believe you're asking for relief that so that it's 1 meter on Byron. And I'm just concerned with the Churchill alternate school. That's 1 block south, I mean. And I know, I believe that like the intersection there, I don't know if they have school crossing guards or not, but I know it's fairly busy intersection at school hours. And I guess I'm just concerned that that setback would be better at 3 meters to accommodate like the children and that certain, start and end of school and stuff like that. And even the one on Danforth, I believe it states it's 0.2 that you're asking for relief, which is pretty substantial from the 3 meter requirement. So I'm just wondering if you can explain a little bit of that. Are there going to be impacts from that, do you think?
I'd be happy to take that, and if maybe Lisa, if you want to add to it later. So on Byron, firstly, I would say that the building that we're proposing is no closer than the building that's already there. So if you can imagine where the wall of the dry cleaner is, there's quite a substantial sidewalk there on the city right of way. So what's there, what's on city property, in addition to the 1 meter, will actually be quite a wide sidewalk in comparison to probably what is the norm. And additionally, there will be a lot of, there will be trees, there will be probably benches, planters, that kind of thing, which will have the natural effect to sort of calm traffic down. So I think, post-development, this will probably be safer for children. And I think, the similar scenario will apply to Churchill. You didn't mention that one as being a concern, but we already have to be back considerably for that one due to the wires. And then on Danforth, yes, we're asking to be almost flush to the property line. But again, you've got on that side an even more substantial distance to the actual roadway. So it just seemed like a reasonable ask to go to that extent on those sides to produce a more high quality piece of architecture.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's nothing more I want to add to that, Chris, but what I do want, this is a great drawing that's up there now, as you can see the edge of asphalt versus the building. So that even though the property line, we take the setback to the property line, not to the edge of the road. So there is a considerable distance on both Danforth and Byron between the edge of the building and when the road sort of starts. And Danforth Avenue being, it's a unique situation road. It doesn't appear to be a real road. It almost feels like a driveway into a parking lot area. So there is going to be, this is going to create more of that edge and more of, from our perspective, it makes it feel a little bit safer to transverse that section versus what is there today. And the same thing with Byron, it's going to formalize that a little bit more. And we are working with the city because the city will own what's beyond that before it within the road right of way to ensure that the sidewalks and all of that are up to standard and when we are finished construction.
Okay, thank you.
And I think there's another point to be made actually, which just thinking about it now, if you don't mind, and that is that currently there are entrances to the site off Churchill, sort of mid-block, and there's another one on the west side of the site where there's another parking lot towards the back. So we're essentially eliminating both of those. So from that point of view, it will be a lot safer. All of the traffic will be sort of on the back, if you want to sort of call it a service road, because as Lisa mentioned, it sort of feels that way. And so it seemed like the natural spot to put, loading and parking entrances and that sort of thing. So I think it'll be safer overall.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks so much, Sue, and thanks so much, everyone. Going to next on the list, Tim, if you'd like to speak.
Okay, hi, Steph. My question, I'm trying to get a feeling of how far the building is from the property line on Churchill? Not the hydro lines, not the curb, nothing like that. How far is it from the property line?
Yeah, so the answer to your question is it's about 3.5 meters.
It's, are you sure of that? Because the
Quite
way
sure.
I see the plan, it's 3.5 meters from the hydro lines.
So I don't know how clear it will show on that site plan, but just looking at ours, you know, of course, we have to work with a legal survey. So the information that we get, you know, is exactly what's there. And so we've positioned our building based off of that. So we're at 3.44 meters to the south east corner of our building to the property line. And whereas to the overhead wires, it's 5 meters.
Okay.
Yeah, and our request here, sorry, for clarification, because you usually find that people are requesting to have a shorter setback. In this case, we're actually asking for an increase to the setback because there's a minimum requirement. There's a maximum front yard requirement for this site, which is the 2 meters, which we are exceeding in order to have the wires, which are higher than the ground. The hydro has like a lollipop, we call it, that you sort of have to be away from their infrastructure. So the pole has a 1 meter setback, but as you go up to sort of the wires, you have to be 5 meters away. So that's what's dictating where the building ends up being, because we need to make sure we have that 5 meters from the wire. It has nothing to do with the property line itself. It has to be to the distance of the wires, which then is asking us to increase the setback.
Can I ask another question?
Of course, go ahead.
Steph, do you know if there's a bike lane on Byron in between Churchill and, you know, going west? I know there's one on the south side, but is there a bike lane like on both sides of that street there?
There isn't, but one of these days I'd love for there to be. I mean, one of these days, ideally, there would be a cycle track taking you all the way through, because there'll be cycle tracks now east of Churchill on Byron. But there are no sound plans today to put cycle tracks on the west side, and there's not even a painted bike lane on the westbound direction heading west from Churchill.
Okay, but there is one on going east.
Yes.
Okay, so what I'm asking is about the intersection. Okay, and trying to in the future accommodate, you know, a safe cycling intersection, because clearly, you know, we've got cycling in almost every direction on that corner. You know, we spent a lot of money on Churchill, you know, going south from Byron all the way up to Carling. So I'm concerned about having enough property under city control to put a proper safe cycling, safe pedestrian intersection in there, whether it's in 5 years, 10 years, or 15 years, because this is the only opportunity. So I'm not quite sure, because I can't figure out the site plan, but is there a need for a site triangle at the corner of Byron and Churchill?
I can answer that question. So hi, I'm Kirsten. I'm the city planner and the file lead for this project. So the official plan does allow the city to take corner site triangles for intersection improvements or protected intersections, as you would require for a cycle track and for safe crossing. So as part of this development review, the transportation team and the cycling active transportation group would be looking at that, and we'll be providing those comments back to FO10 about what that requirement is.
So would this development qualify to have a site, you know, in that intersection? Would that be a priority for the city, you know, to do that right out of the gate?
Yes, so I would say on almost every application on a corner, we will take that at the first opportunity, which is most often a site plan control application. So yes, we do look to do that. And we just, through the review process, we determine what the size of that site triangle requirement is.
So kind of to follow up on that, clearly, you know, in the future, Churchill will be a cycling street. Okay. And I'm assuming that you know, corridor, you know, it's kind of off the roadway. Is there enough property right now to continue that on? Or does the city, you know, should the city be looking at, you know, taking a widening from the property on Churchill, on the Churchill side?
I can get back to you on that. Our transportation team did not flag that a road widening is required on the Churchill side. We're bound within what the official plan allows us to take and what's already been defined as the required right of way. So we can't take any more than what's already in the official plan. So if it's not in there, or if they already meet the right of way requirement on Churchill, we cannot take any further land at this time. But I can get back to you, or you can follow up with me via email and we can get some more details on that.
Okay, but I mean, you only have one opportunity to do it, and this is the opportunity. Like, if you don't get it now, you won't get it in the next 100 years. So that's what I'm asking. Is in the planning, in the planning end of it from your end? Is that something that, as these applications come through, that is a serious, something that is taken seriously, you know, 10, 15, 20 years down the line? We need, we're going to need more cycling, more and better pedestrian infrastructure if we're going to have these intensifications within, you know, Westboro.
I sense that the counselor wants to say something, but yeah, but I will say, you know, the protected right of ways for the city within our official plan come from the transportation master plan, which does consider future cycling networks. So it is all linked together. Unfortunately, we're limited to what's in the official plan now. We legislatively can't take any more than that. So if a good idea or a change comes up in the future, we do have to embed it within the necessary, you know, planning documents to do that. So, but it is definitely a great conversation. We could probably have more conversation about it if you want to touch base, because I'm also not a transportation expert. So it might be better to loop one in.
Kirsten, I would just ask that you keep me looped into that conversation, because we actually have put Section 37 benefits toward a future protected intersection here at Churchill and Byron. And on Monday in my budget meeting with the mayor, I spoke to sort of one of the big capital priorities I have in this term of council is to finally connect the new Scott Street cycling infrastructure with the Churchill intersection. Because at this point, a great cycle track on Churchill stops, and then it's Hell's Bells down to Scott, and then on Scott you are connected with, you know, Orleans to Britannia and further segregated spine infrastructure. So this is, you know, in this last term of my being a politician, this is my big goal, is to make sure that we get Churchill Scott connected to Byron and finish off that connection, So I want to make sure that we have the land to be able to do it. It looks like the building is going to be set back, but I want to make sure we don't lose the opportunity in site plan to account for that future protected intersection.
Okay, I will do follow up for sure. Thanks.
Fantastic.
Okay, thanks,
for-
Steph.
Oh, thanks, Tim, as well. Sorry, you beat me to it. So I'm just going to go back to the list. Someone had a question, but just having some trouble asking it out loud. So I'm going to read it. So Karen was asking, with regard to the traffic studies, the 2019 world is long gone in Westboro. Is there a need to redo the traffic studies, or is this something that can be addressed? And I'll just put that question out.
May I just address the traffic question? Just from a perspective of a city councilor who's going to be voting on this, their projections based on their 2019-2020 traffic counts are for, I can't remember, it's like 3 trips generated in the AM peak hour, and that's a meaningless level increase in traffic, and no matter whether the traffic counts are out of date or not, this building is gonna, it's very obviously, to those who are familiar with transportation, it is very obviously not going to generate any significant level of traffic. That's not to say that, you know, we can't make improvements to Churchill Avenue and the flow of it. You know, we've been doing a few things that have actually sort of slowed Churchill down as we try to make things safer for pedestrians, and adding things like cycle tracks is going to mean some new hard choices. But with respect to this building, it is not going to generate any meaningful level of traffic compared to what is on the street today. The overall Westboro intensification, absolutely, there's going to be more traffic, and we need to deal with that. But in the context of this site plan, or this rezoning approval, it's just not going to be a consideration for anyone sitting around the council table.
Thanks, Jeff. I think if it's fine, we'll leave it there for now, but if anyone wants to follow up with you or us, feel free. Going to the next on the list, I've seen some hands go up and go down, so I apologize if you had your question answered in the end. But Anton, I see you've had your hand up for a while, if you'd like to go next.
Fantastic, thanks very much. My name is Anton Bezglasny. I live 230 meters away on Everett and Byron. So I think out of the people in this meeting, I will be the most impacted. I don't see any other neighbors that I know that live closer. Maybe the one person that spoke earlier who can see the building. We can also see the building. So 230 meters away. And I have 4 areas of concerns. So I'll just summarize them first and then go through one by one. And then I'm hoping to hear about kind of the thoughts behind those concerns. So my concerns are about height, traffic, parking, and setbacks. So kind of all of it. So to begin with height, I do not support a 15% increase to the height limit above what's the maximum in the plan. I don't see the point of having a city plan approved by politicians, consulted with communities, if we're just going to increase it by 15%, the height of this building. I heard people speak about the importance of sticking to the city plan about bike lanes just now. So I think it's equally important that we stick to the city plan about building heights. I strongly support densification when it's done responsibly and in accordance with the approved city plan. So height. So I'd love to hear what the rationale is for the proposal of why this building should be higher than the city plan, aside from just like increased profits. Because as a community member, those increased profits, which are a benefit for the owners of the space, create a massive cost for me for like the next 50 years that I'll stay in this neighborhood. Traffic. I disagree with your perspective, Councillor. I'm here every day, the corner of Churchill and Byron, and a massive building like this, I think, will highly increase traffic because every person in that building will likely have a car. I think it's a myth that people who live in Westboro don't have vehicles. They still go to Costco and they still go skiing and they still drive to yoga at the other end of town. So those people will need to get around, and every one of them will need to get into that building. And all of that traffic will be on Churchill and Byron. So I'm not really sure where the analysis is of how this will negatively impact traffic. And I'm not sure what the rationale is for like a zero increase to the throughput, for example, no additional turning lanes, no additional widening of the road. Parking. I do not see the logic behind creating a building with 8 units and half of that in terms of parking spots. Effectively, those people will just park on our street. And that's not sustainable because there are already streets full of parking because there's not a lot of parking on the properties themselves. So another negative impact for me as a community member. And finally, setbacks. I really don't support the proposals to eat up more of the setback. Again, there's a plan for a reason. Residential applications have a really hard time with setbacks. So I would just propose that we treat this large commercial development in the same way, where we severely limit folks' ability to grow their space with the setbacks, because we do need that space. There's a reason it exists in the plan. So to summarize, I really support the official plan. I support density and development. What I don't support is encroachments on those defined limits, because those limits decrease the quality of life of the people that live in this neighborhood. Thank you.
I can take some of those. I think I'll and then Chris will probably be able to jump in, and I'll leave the traffic one, because I think again, not traffic engineer, talking to the impacts that this building would have. It's also the idea that everybody that rents in this building will have a car regardless if they have a spot to park it. I know from experience, when I moved to Ottawa, I had a car and was looking to, and I need a car for work, doing what I do. I drive around to sites and stuff. So I wasn't taking the risk of renting somewhere and then parking down the street and hoping that I was going to find parking. And it comes down to property management and informing your tenants that there is no parking available and street parking is not guaranteed. And we are seeing that more and more now with the reduction of the number of parking spaces being built, that people are making that choice. This is an area that is 600 meters, less than 600 meters to transit. People will have to choose a car or living somewhere else. So that's my comment on that. And then that also helps with the idea of having increased number of cars. If we put let's 50 people in the 50 units in this building, and they all do have a car, and we provided that amount of car parking, then you're going to have the increase in number of people driving on this site. So that helps offset some of the traffic concerns that are already in this neighborhood by reducing the number of cars that are actually being added. The official plan it's hard to it's not hard to describe. I can do that, but so 24 meters is currently what the site is allowed to be built at. So that is 7 stories if you think about it as 3 stories, 3 meters per floor. So we're asking for an 8-story building. The reason it's going up to 27.5 meters is because of the way that the grade is on this site and the way we have to calculate it. The steep slope along Byron is actually creating that increase in height versus stories. And so zoning allows currently for 24 meters, which, as I said, is about a 7-story building. And then when you factor in the garage levels, because they're exposed from the Danforth side, that elevates the height as you calculate it by definition. So that's where we are with regards to following the official plan. And this is within stone's throw distance to a main street corridor where 9 stories is permitted. And this is part of the Westboro Main Street character area within the secondary plan, which has those characteristics. And the other thing with regards to the building footprint, in order for the footprint of the building for efficiencies, it's a very awkwardly shaped site with some interesting grades on it. And because of those, as we mentioned, hydro wires, we are actually not building full to the front. Like, we could be pulling this building closer to Churchill and build within zoning and giving us an additional 1.5 meters off the front. It's by pulling it back, we're decreasing our footprint in the front, but expanding it on the side. So the buildable area, while we haven't actually done the comparison as to if we were to build it exactly per zoning footprint versus what we're asking for, the difference is, I would argue, are very, very minimal with regards to the footprint of the building. And this creates a more efficient space for parking and turning radiuses to actually allow for those underground levels to function correctly. I'll leave it at that. I'm not sure if Chris has anything further that he wants to add.
There we go. Sorry, trying to unmute myself. Yeah, no, very eloquently put. I think I would add, you know, this is a site with a former dry cleaner. There's some soil that has to be remediated. That's an extremely expensive undertaking for the owner to do. You know, I don't know what the numbers are, but they certainly do, and they've really got to maximize what they can do here to build this thing. The cost of construction is totally obscene these days. And so I think they're looking for a modest, you know, increase on some of those setbacks. And yeah, I'm sure we'll find that if we were to run that calculation, we wouldn't be far off of what would be permitted if we were just to push it out towards the front. Yeah, I'll leave it there.
Anton, did you have any other questions for now, or would it be all right if I went to the next person?
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Sorry, I really didn't hear anything convincing. You know, I appreciate the effort, but to me, this really looks like a money grab. I mean, the argument of construction costs are expensive and the soil is dirty is just not really, for me as a community, as a user of this community, and as a homeowner, right, who's been here for 8 years and hopes to be here for another 50. I'm really not sure that's a fair argument to make, that it's expensive to develop the site, therefore we should exceed the official planned building height by 15%. I would argue the owner of the site is choosing to develop it. That's a choice they're making. So, you know, they should be bound by the official plan, which was approved by a very large kind of stakeholder community in Ottawa. And these bit by bit encroachments on the official plan, right? We see it all over the neighborhood with large developments. One by one, they slowly reduce the quality of life for us. So for me, thank you for the comments, but I just want to register it with the kind of the city officials that are here. As a community member, I think this proposed development should be held to the same standards as the city plan that were approved. And I'll leave it at that. Afterwards, my wife is here as well, who also lives here. So we'll put up our hand again, but that won't be me speaking. So I will spare you my other commentary, but thank you very much for coming here and at least hearing about what we have to say.
Thank you, Anton, and I'll keep that in mind for after. Kirsten, I saw your hand go up immediately too, so.
Yes, I just wanted to just let everybody know, to get really technical about the whole process. This is not an official process under the Planning Act. This is something that the applicant is doing together with the councillor. So I'm not recording comments, although the recording is online. So please do submit your comments in writing, either via fax or email or letter to me. And then I'll make sure you're on the notification list for the planning committee meeting where this will be considered. And then you'll also have that opportunity when you get that notification to submit more formal comments. So please make sure you do that. Also, you can do it through the DevApps website as well, and it comes directly to me. So just wanted to make sure everybody knew that. Thanks.
Thanks, Kirsten. I think I'll take a moment after and just get your info in the chat for everyone, sort of the simplicity of it. I'm just going to jump to the Q&A because we've had 2 questions just sitting there, and I think they're quite straightforward. And then I'll return to all the hands up we've seen. So Anonymous has asked, where will deliveries and moving trucks park?
So I'll take that. So we were looking at having a loading space just to the south of the site. That's something that, if I remember correctly, the transportation department is not supportive of. So it'll have to be down on the Danforth side of the building, and there's more space for it there anyways, so it would make more sense.
All right, thanks, Chris. And I'm sure if they'd like some more clarification, the Q&A is still open, and I'll be keeping an eye on it. And the next question in the Q&A is, aside from trees and plant beds, are there any other eco-related features being considered for this building? Lisa or Chris, all right, I'll leave it to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably through the detailed design process, we'll certainly insert things. But from a sort of holistic perspective, it's going to be, you know, the greening of the streetscape that was just mentioned, the reduction in the heat island effect with the reflective membrane, that kind of thing. And just, you know, by virtue of the fact that, you know, we're proposing to develop a formerly contaminated site and provide housing, and housing which is within close proximity to public transit. So, you know, that's in and of itself, I think, beneficial from an eco point of view.
Thanks, Chris. In that case, I'll jump back to the speakers list. Judy, you were next, so if you'd like to speak, go ahead.
Thanks, Steph. For those who don't know me, I'm the executive director of the Westboro Village BIA. So this property is sort of just on the edge of our boundary. And I had asked Steph if I should ask my question or just email, because it's mainly around the traffic study. And I know the traffic management specialist isn't here, but it's more along Danforth and just how both the planner, the city, and the applicant envision the flow of traffic potentially changing. Danforth is primarily commercial. There is another mixed use development proposed for Danforth. And it is one way in a very small section of Danforth for those who don't drive down it or walk down it. And then it's two ways the rest of the way. And the distance from Danforth to Byron at Roosevelt is less than 1 car length. So I was just kind of hoping to hear more about the traffic flow, but I'm happy to send an email instead because I know the traffic specialist isn't here tonight.
Judy,
Yeah,
I can say.
Pass that on. Sorry, go ahead, Kirsten.
Oh, sorry, Lisa. I was going to say, I asked the same question, you know, to our transportation team, because it is a really unique area. So please do email so we can get the, and as Lisa said, Lisa, she can, Judy, if you can maybe email all of us and we can look at that. Thanks.
Thanks, Kirsten, and thanks, Judy, as well for asking. And just returning to the list, Deb, I see your hands up if you'd like to speak again.
I just wanted to follow up on Anton's comment. When Jeff was talking about the bike paths, I think he was talking mostly about Churchill, but the pathway along Byron, I don't know if you've ever taken a bike down there, but like you're hoping that the cars leave you enough room to get down that hill in one piece, and you're catching quite a click because that's a bit of a hill. So like I really think now is the city's opportunity to put in make it a little bit wider, to put in that bike path there so that cars and cyclists can navigate that hill safely. The other comment I have is that I live on Everett, and just in the last year, I cannot get over how many, like, it's great for traffic calming because there's so many parked cars on our street now. And I'm seeing it throughout my neighborhood. So this is before the traffic studies were done. So I don't know what's going on, but this is, something's happening. And these traffic studies, like, to be honest with you, I am critical of them. Because when a traffic study was done of the traffic in my neighborhood, they never took into consideration that on Everett, we have a major daycare center called Mothercraft that has 250 families using their services. We also have an entrance to a city park called Clare Gardens Park, where people park. They drive their cars to come to the park with their small children. This has not been taken into the traffic study. So when you're telling me that these traffic studies were done, and they were done a little while ago, I kind of go, well, what was Westboro then and what is Westboro now are two different things. And I think that they've got to take an awful lot more of the local culture of the neighborhoods, and actually even some of the feedback of what the neighbors have to say about traffic. Because to be honest with you, it's the people who live in these neighborhoods that are the experts. So I doubt that will be taken into consideration, but just, you know,
I wonder, Deb. Yeah, so this is Jeff.
Then we need to be taken into consideration.
So I just want folks to sort of understand what the traffic studies are, which is a calculation of how much more traffic is expected to be generated as a result of this building. And is that going to, I mean, ultimately, is that going to lead to failure at say a particular intersection, right? So how many trips do they expect to be generated from this building? Where do they expect that traffic to go? And is the result going to be an unacceptable increase in traffic that cannot be handled by the existing infrastructure? And in this instance, the traffic study from what I scanned looks like it has approximately like the right number of trips. It's forecasting that this building is going to generate relatively few trips out of it. And what I would do is I would invite you to come out with me tomorrow morning or any morning, stand outside, you know, the building at Rosemount or on Scott, and count the number of cars that are coming out of there. Like stay with me for an hour, 2 hours, count the number of cars that are coming out. The big increase in traffic in our neighborhood is not the result of the buildings that are going in, right? It's Aylmer is exploding, and people are getting more and more backed up trying to cross the Champlain Bridge. And we're seeing real pressures in our ward on traffic. This building is not going to result in any significant amount that you would be able to measure in terms of impact on the streets. Right. And I just want to be really transparent. It's not my job to make a recommendation or not. I just have to vote on it. But I can tell you right now, when I take a look at the traffic study that these folks have put in place, or sorry, that they've asserted and said, yeah, it's going to generate, you know, under 10 trips in the AM peak. I believe that. And I believe that our road capacity can certainly handle 10 trips when the number of cars that are going through Byron Churchill is already probably, you know, 350, 400 cars in the course of one of those PM peak hours. So it's I'm not looking at the traffic study in this one as guidance on how I'm going to vote on it. I think the one thing that Anton said that really has some legitimacy though, and that you've noticed as well, Deb, is this question of people who are parking cars on the street growing at a very high level, right? There are more buildings going in that don't offer private parking for everybody who lives in it. And they are scrambling to those people who are moving into these buildings who have cars, but no private parking spot. They call my office, right? Because they want help trying to find parking. Because when they park on the street, they get hassled. Neighbors call bylaw on them, and I totally understand why. They have to move their cars during the parking bans, daytime parking bans. Now we have nighttime parking bans. And honestly, people move, right? They move out of our ward because they have a car and they can't find a place to park it. So they move to buildings that do offer a parking spot. So that is definitely a dynamic that's out there. Is I think for the next few years, we're going to continue to see more pressure on street parking as these buildings go in that don't offer private parking for every unit. And council knows that, right? We know that that's the effect of providing developers with the flexibility to build buildings that don't offer a parking spot to everybody. The alternative is to offer a parking spot to everybody, require them to do that, require the developers to dig down deeper or build fewer units. Neither, and that's not something that count, like the negative outcomes from forcing buildings to have as many parking spots as there are units is frankly to just exacerbate urban sprawl, right? Like this is all, it's all the big picture. What gives is private parking. What gives is the free flow of traffic on streets as we're taking a look at trying to address climate change through mitigating urban sprawl. So we know that these are some of the impacts that are out there. Yeah, so that's my perspective on it as a city councilor who's again, I'm going to need to vote on this one. I know that this building is going to generate virtually no new traffic. And again, I would just invite people to come on out with me some morning and stand outside one of these big buildings and see how much traffic actually comes out. It's the actual traffic that's being generated in our ward is coming as a result of larger regional pressures.
Jeff, I was just wondering, when you were talking about the section 37 money, were you thinking of widening? Was it something to do with bike paths along the hill on Churchill, or would it also include Byron?
No, I've been trying to put together the capital to create a protected intersection just at Byron and Churchill, which is going to be expensive. Like that'll be hundreds of thousands of dollars to do. When you were talking about adding some kind of cycle track on the north side of Byron, so on the westbound direction, like it would have to stop pretty much at the end of the Laundryland property, because at that point it goes into an embankment, right? So you can't really extend it without it being a extraordinarily extraordinarily expensive project. But if you had a protected intersection at Byron and Churchill, which I've asked staff to make sure we get built, because longer term, I want to see Churchill, the cycle track completed all the way to Scott on Churchill. I'd be challenged to suggest how we're going to be able to do that on Byron without a major rebuild. I think the opportunity to get segregated cycling infrastructure, the length of Byron to from Churchill to Roosevelt is going to be a rebuild. I don't think that's going to be something you can accomplish through benefits money.
And will there be money from this project going towards what was called, I don't know what it's called now, the Cash in Lieu and Parkland Fund?
Yeah, that's a good question for Kirsten. I assume it's going to throw off CIL. Is it going to throw off a CBC as well?
Yes, yes to both. So Cash in Lieu Parkland will be collected, and it is subject to CBCs because community benefits charges, because it is 5 stories or taller. So yes, it is.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Deb, and of course, thanks, Jeff and Kirsten as well. So I've seen some hands go down. I apologize if you no longer have a question, but I'll keep going in the order I saw them. Karen, I saw your hand was up. If you still have a question you'd like to ask.
I do. I just wasn't sure if I was supposed to keep my hand in the air, so I took it down. I have to say one thing about the traffic, and then I'll move on to something specific to this building, because I really think the traffic issue is bigger than any one project. And just while it's an open house forum, I wanted to ask our councillor do you see any opportunity to discuss the real and growing traffic problems in Westboro and in the city broadly? Because this is not the forum for it. I didn't really fully understand what you said when you said that the outdated traffic studies are still okay because there would be minimal effect on traffic. The 3 trips were, what was your word? Meaningless. You know what I fully agree on? I think the traffic studies as they stand are meaningless today because it's not, if it's a count of cars, cars are not the problem in Westboro. Construction traffic is the problem in Westboro, and service traffic is the problem in Westboro. And I'm just fine with not having any parking in any new builds. What I have a problem with is the trucks and the extent to which it is the construction workers who are plugging up the local streets, trying to get to the sites due to the sheer volume of intensification that's occurring right now. And it's going to be the new future as well. So I just wanted to say, do you have another opportunity either in your quarterlies that you have or some other forum to discuss traffic? Because this big 18-wheeler in the city thing is just not working.
Good call. No, I totally agree with you. So the biggest opportunity we have in this term of council is the transportation master plan, how people move around the city, by what mode, going from what point to what other point. There are some things that I don't want to raise expectations that we are, while the ward is undergoing the intensification that it's going under, I don't want to raise false hopes that the city is going to be able to offer a lot of relief from that. The construction is moving ahead during, for each of the traffic control plans, and we'll have a discussion with this developer if this building is approved as they get closer to construction about what their truck routes are going to be, et cetera, for the most immediately adjoining neighbors. But they do have a right to run their trucks back and forth to this site, and their workers do have a right that the city's not going to be able to interfere with to drive to their parking to their site. But in the bigger picture, longer term, how do we account for vehicle congestion in the city? Yeah, that's the transportation master plan.
Yeah, so it's service vehicles right now that are clogging up the streets, construction workers parking and walking great distances with their lunch kits to their own sites because there are so many going simultaneously. So I just question the value of counting cars coming and going.
So these these traffic studies, I don't pay a lot of attention to them. There are some times when I believe staff should refuse an application unless the developer is willing to undertake the cost of improving transportation infrastructure to handle the contribution that they're making. I can't think of an example in our ward, but an entire new subdivision in Orleans where we have not provided sufficient public transit that is going to generate 500 car trips of people who are trying to get downtown, and we have 2-lane roads, right? Laura Dudas is absolutely correct when she says we should be refusing those applications for the subdivisions because the level of traffic that is going to be contributed by the new development is creating an unacceptable impact to the overall transportation study. For these infills, it's not even really a consideration, right?
What is it?
The amount of traffic that each one of these infills is contributing.
No, the infill, they trigger nothing for the
like
actual residents.
This one is not going to generate very much traffic.
Except for the service vehicles, and
but that's a temporary condition, right? And there is, and I know Anton has maybe a different perspective on it, but the building of housing is a public benefit, right? It is important to us in Ottawa that we build more housing and that we build more housing in the areas where people can live most sustainably, like Westboro, right? It is important to the sustainability of the city that more people be able to live in Westboro, and that means we need to approve developments. There is the impact, though, of construction vehicles,
and service vehicles. And by that, I mean going forward, perolator. Everybody
Yeah.
has to have cleaning staff. Everybody has to have the Ubers, and it's amazing. That's all it is. It's not private vehicles, but
And now we're in like really interesting territory of what are the solutions
that's
and
where
where,
I've been all the time.
yeah. And
Because
that's, you know,
that's my question. How can we live here? I'm going to move. It's going to be because of traffic, but it's
Yeah.
not car traffic. And I don't care about parking my car. I just can't stand the service vehicles. So
there are some things where I wish I had the power to do things. Like, for
yeah,
example,
make that happen.
have you seen Canada Post's new little electric delivery vehicle?
I have
Um,
not.
oh, it's delightful. Jillian, you've just moved on to Foster. It is you. I think he's serving your street. It's this half-size Canada Post electric vehicle. The operators love it. Apparently, it's a pilot, but this one's a bit tippy, apparently, which is a little concerning. But you know, I wish we had, as a city, as a municipality, the power to say, look, if you want to be in the business of delivering things, you have to have a license from the city. And in order to have one of the conditions of license is that your vehicles have to be electric and they have to be appropriately sized for the urban context. But that's not a
what I'm
power we
talking
have.
about. Yeah.
Yeah,
We even
that's
have
not a
mini
power we have.
garbage truck. I saw a mini garbage truck beep, beep,
I know,
beeping up
those are
Byron. Yeah, and I
Yep.
never saw it again. Anyway,
Yeah.
for
And
the builder here,
you see, we're having the same discussion. I'm sorry, we're completely off topic.
Off topic.
But like this is the discussion that we're having downtown with the truck route, right? Which has been a 20-year discussion, probably, with trucks using
Yes.
Rideau and King Edward. So the transportation master plan is where the real focus comes on trying to make getting people from point A to point B sustainable and livable for the residents of Ottawa.
okay,
For
I'll
whatever
go there.
purpose those strips are being made. Yeah.
For the developer on this building, can you show us where the mechanical is, please? Where's your HVAC and which way will it be venting? Not is it enclosed, but where does it vent? We get a fair bit heading into the neighborhood on the south side, and I'm interested in knowing where you're going to vent yours. Even though it will be on the roof and it's expected that we're not going to be able to hear it. In fact, the acoustics are such that on a clear day, I can hear forever if I can steal some song lyric. Because all of this you can hear in a quiet night because of the hill you sit on.
Yeah, so Chris here, I'm not sure we have those answers yet because, you know, we just haven't gotten to that level of detailed design, but it's likely
Is it
that
not the site? I'm sorry, I'm confused. The site plan application, isn't that now? Combined with the rezoning?
but you're talking about detailed mechanical design systems.
Yeah, is there another opportunity to provide those comments?
No, you can certainly make those comments. I'm just saying, I don't know that we've fully resolved it, but more than likely there's going to be a unit within each suite, and those will be, you know, vented out through vents in the windows and the spandrels, if you will. So so as to sort of integrate well with the look of the architecture. So every unit would sort of have like a smaller outlet as opposed to big massive ones.
Okay, so you're not planning on having a half floor or anything on the roof, an additional half floor?
There may be some units on the roof. I simply don't know if there will be chillers or air handlers. There will be something for the common areas, certainly, but I just don't see it being a major source of noise.
Kirsten, can you just clarify what the next steps are on this? Are there opportunities?
Yeah, to answer the question just about the noise study, it is a site plan, so we do have a lot of detailed information, but we also recognize that mechanical information isn't typically done until building permit when contractors are engaged and moving forward. So site plans typically have a requirement for a stationary noise study that must be submitted and reviewed prior to the building permit being issued. So we recognize that it will be after site plan, but before building permit. And for this process in general, we have the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment and site plan control. It's all in the review period. We accept comments up until the point where we can't. We do reach a point where we can't accept them anymore because we need to keep moving forward. For the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment, the next step is it will have to go to planning committee for consideration and recommendation to council. That's another opportunity for the public to provide input before council, and then council is the final step where the city sees it, and then it goes into an appeal period. And then site plan usually progresses after that, provided everything goes favorably for the applicant after council. So you can still continue to submit comments related to site plan. But once it does go to planning committee and council, if it does get approved, the building envelope is pretty much set at that point, and it's more of the finer details about the site plan. Things like materiality or landscaping, the questions we're asking now about noise, etc. So but if you have any other questions about the process, of course, feel free to email me at any time.
I guess at an open house, I was hoping that some of the folks who are here might know that for some parties, there's a pre-construction meeting, and for some developments. And I have found those extremely useful in terms of knowing what to expect and making the developer's life somewhat easier. And I don't know if that's standard or selected invitees only, but it's really nice when you get to see what's coming and when.
That's something that my office has sort of been insisting on since I got elected. And we used to be able to make it a condition of site plan, but I believe we no longer have that leverage thanks to provincial changes. But what I am assuming is that most developers will continue to want to do a pre-construction meeting. So after they've got their zoning, after they've got their site plan, the details of the building have been argued, and they've got what they want. The pre-construction meeting, once they've got their general contractor on board, to discuss the logistics of construction would be something that my office would be asking the developer
it's your
to
office
do.
Doing that. Okay, I find them really useful. Thank you.
We've been finding them extremely helpful for sure.
That's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Karen. I'm going to pull a question out of the Q&A and then go to Anton. I only mentioned that as we don't have any other questions or hands up after that. So if anyone has percolating questions or anything, I think we're probably entering into wrapping up territory. So here's kind of the first set of prompts to get your questions in if you're holding on to them for any reason. So Anonymous asks, will the awnings and outdoor lighting be installed as shown in the photos? So I'm not sure, Chris, if you'd like to take that, but I put it out.
Could be. I think it's our hope to do that. We haven't gone into the detailed design. As I say, we may find a reason why, they don't work in certain locations. But yeah, I mean, it does add something to the project. It gives it that human scale, and I think the owner would like to see it happen. So I hope that's okay.
Yeah, just further on that, they are shown as renderings, and to Chris's point, we still have to go through the detailed sort of design of the building, mechanical, electrical, and all of that. But there is, we are required through site plan, and Kirsten could comment on this as well, to provide like lighting certificates to make sure that the lights we're providing are not casting shadows, casting shadows or direct light into neighborhoods. So we do have that as part of the building permit process, where we have to provide those letters from a certified lighting designer. And then the awnings, some of them we do, because of our shortened setback, I can't remember if we need encroachment agreements if we are projecting some of those onto city property or not. Christopher shaking his head. So in some projects where we have awnings indicated, we then have to get into a discussion with the city to allow us to project into their right of way. But if this is not the case here, I'm not going to bore you with those details.
Thanks so much, Lisa. In that case, I'll just jump next to Anton, and then Deb, if you'd like to go.
Hi, this is Chantal, Anton's wife. Sorry, I missed the very early part of the presentation, but I'm fairly familiar with the development application, or somewhat familiar. So I do want to just add my voice to the comments. regarding height and setback specifically as they pertain to the official plan that was just approved and finalized in 2021. I heard the argument that it's expensive to remediate the soil, so we need to build bigger for more profit. I'm really sorry, but I do not buy that argument at all. That's a complete choice. Anyone would love to be owners of that property. So it's not doing us a favor in any way by developing that land to that extent. I am pro densification. I am pro, developing Westboro, having more people live here when it's done sensibly in accordance with the plan. I feel really helpless as a resident of Ottawa that this is even a conversation that has to be had. I don't understand why so much time and effort was spent developing this official plan. If then we spend all this time and effort making arguments on why we shouldn't follow the plan. It's completely counterintuitive. And regarding the height, something about the land elevation, it's lower here, it's higher there. Therefore, the developer feels like this gives them permission to apply for a higher elevation. The elevation of the lot is not a surprise element. It is a known fact. So develop the land in accordance with what is in the official plan. And regarding the setbacks, I think it's really important to also comply with the plan for streetscape, for the enjoyment of every single person who lives here, who shops here, who works here. Those setbacks are there for a reason. They're there for green space. They're there for breathing room. So regarding the height and the setbacks, I would really appreciate if the official plan was being followed. It was developed for a reason. And I would appreciate if this building would comply with that.
I guess to that, like we already did answer sort of our position on this, and as a property owner, you are entitled to do what you wish with your lands, and there are processes that allow for official plan amendments or zoning changes. You do have to appreciate that every site is unique, every parcel is unique, and coming up with a citywide plan or a specific zoning that accommodates all the nuances that each site provides. Those are the reasons why we have the processes that we have that allow for amendments, and we're just exercising the right as a property owner to do that. We're at this point, it's a request. We're not guaranteed anything. We have to rely on the planning framework and the policies in place by the city, by the province to help achieve the goals. And as a property owner, the Jemmy and her brother or her husband are able to make these requests, and then it's up to the cities and to the city to decide whether or not what we're asking for does in fact follow in the guide of what the city's vision is. So I'm going to leave it at that unless somebody else wants to add on to that.
The developer can request away anything under the sun. That's all great. I just hope that at the end of the day, the city is able to see that this is just a hope to have more revenue at the end of the day, build bigger to sell more units, to rent more units, to have more profit. Like I said, the plan is there for a reason. Every lot is unique, of course. However, the plan is there, and this lot is not exceptionally unique in the sense that it should have essentially no setbacks at the end of the day. Like these setbacks proposed are ridiculous in my opinion. And it's a small footprint, sure, like the lot itself is not humongous, but build accordingly, get a different lot, sell it, buy something else, develop that something else, find a workaround. To at the end of the day respect the plan.
Thanks, Chantel, for your comments. And maybe this is a great opportunity, sort of as we're nearing the end, for your comments and anyone else who's holding on to either similar, different opinions. We've put in the chat, I don't know if you've seen it popping in the meeting now, where you can send your comments if they're officially recorded and taken into consideration. So I'm going to re-up those probably soon. But just for your awareness, since as Kirsten said earlier, she's not grabbing these officially down here. So if you'd like them officially on the record, you'll have to send them to her, but they'll be in the record then, and they'll be taken sort of officially into consideration. I know the developers are here and listening, and Kirsten is herself, but just for that sort of added protection, we'll say. So just to say that, and I'll put that again in the chat for your information and everyone else's. And with that, I'll jump to sort of the last person on our speakers list so far. Deb, if you'd like to go, please feel free.
And this is easy. In the plantings, often you see companies come in with plants that are not native to this area. And for example, I'm running a pollinator project in Clare Gardens Park. And so it's very important to be able to plant native stuff so that the little critters, the bugs, and they also call Westboro their home, have the food, the habitat to live in. So I was just wondering, is there any intention on the developer's part to put in native trees, native shrubs, native plants?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, that's generally a good idea. I'm not a landscape architect, but it generally makes sense. It means that they're going to survive. And we certainly do have a landscape architect on board, so they can assist us with that. That's definitely going to be one of their concerns.
Okay, that's great. And my very last comment is to Jenny. I'm glad that the property is staying in the family. I used to go to Laundryland.
Oh, thank you
Really
so
great
much.
family.
Very much appreciated.
Thanks so much, Deb. Anton or Chantel, I'm not sure if it's a legacy hand up or if you have another question. So I just wanted to check before proceeding.
It's me, it's Chantel again. I just have a follow-up regarding the trees and the pollinators and the native species. I think that's such a great thing to do. I'm just curious, where would they go? I don't see any space. Maybe the developer can pull up the proposed plan again and show us where trees could potentially go.
The landscape plan up, but I'm not sure if I have sharing ability or not, Steph. So if I'm going to go find it.
I'll give you that now, Lisa,
Okay,
just so you, sorry about that.
It's okay.
All right. You should be good now.
Again, I'm not a landscape architect, so whether or not they are native species or not, we typically do get comments from the city on the planting plan and what we're proposing. So what I'm going to show you here, I think if I just share my screen.
And if you could show the south side of the building, because there's not really much you can do with the Churchill side.
So I think this, I don't know if my screen is now up there. So
we can see it.
Yeah, so we are, one of the comments we did get, and we got them recently this morning, was talking about soil, the soil capability of, and we have to prove that there is enough room for these trees to go in. So I just wanted to preface that with, this is the application, that this is what went in with the application. So you can see that these are all new plantings. If you think about what's there now versus what's being proposed, there are going to be more streetscape. So the sustainability comment that was happening, this is going to help with that site. It's currently an asphalt parking lot. So this is creating a different streetscape with a lot of greenery to it, including planting beds that are within the city, within the property limits as well. So the plant list is down here. I guess I can zoom in and maybe maybe Deb, you're an expert, you could tell us, but as I said, the city does usually comment on that list to make sure that we are introducing things that will be salt tolerable in some situations, to make sure that what we're planting along roads aren't going to die off because of the climate that we live in with the lovely winter. So this is sort of what we're looking at. In total, you're looking at 21 trees going in. And this is the shrub list, which seems like a lot, but shrubs are counted by like individual leaf sometimes.
I think the hackberry is native. I think the autumn blaze is like a Japanese maple. I'm not sure about Tartar maple. European, I think that says it all right there. That's not native.
Yeah.
Maybe the linden.
Yeah, but we can have a look at that. We've taken that comment down, and if that's something, again, these are city trees that we are proposing to be putting onto city property. So there has to be an agreement with the city as to what we are planting, because they essentially take ownership of them down the road. So
Lisa, there are actually quite a few trees along that the north side of that property that will probably bite the dust.
Yeah, we do. Sometimes the plans will show the tree being removed. I think that might be a separate plan. Oh, if I keep scrolling down, hold on.
I would also venture to say that all those trees, they're pretty much popsicle trees. They're pretty short.
And that has to do with the soil volume that's available in the city's right of way. So even if we did plant them on, even if, let's say, we had a huge setback and that planting's on the property, you still have to have that soil volume to get those bigger trees. And it's just we run into this. Let me stop sharing here. We run into this problem in a lot of infill sites, trying to find the appropriate tree and making sure that it is going to survive once it is there. And so
even along the north side.
The north side. So yeah, so again, this is the north side along Danforth. So I don't know what the one is. I think that's Hackberry. Yeah, so again, these are all on the development application site, so you can go through this in more detail if you require. And again, Kristen's accepting comments, taking notes tonight. So we'll see what comments we get back, and we're not going to just plant trees for the sake of planting trees. We want to make sure that they are going to be viable and successful and contribute.
I was just going to say, along the shrubs, dogwoods are as tough as nails, and they're native, and the pollinators love them.
Good to know.
I'm working with a University of Ottawa professor, so I'm starting to get the drift of what works.
Awesome. Thank you, Deb, for the suggestions, and with your knowledge as well. Another opportunity to get those comments in for the dogwood to Kirsten, and I'm sure it'll be there at the very least. So with that, I'll sort of slowly start to wrap us up, since we're about 8 minutes from our cutoff. If there is a pressing last minute question, of course we can take it, but maybe this is a good part. Kirsten, I know there's sort of the common deadline that's offered on DevApps, but just to reassure people, you are still taking comments, and that deadline is not sort of an extremely firm one at this point. Maybe if you can just speak to that process for anyone who might see that number and think, oh God, the meeting took place afterwards, what will happen?
Yes, for sure. We have to put comment deadlines, otherwise things would go on forever. But legislatively, we do have a timeline, so we are always working to meet that timeline. Of course, we do accept comments until we do write a final report. So until we're ready to bring something forward to Planning Committee. And then if you do miss that opportunity to get your comments into myself and consider for the Planning Planning and Housing Committee report. You can also present those comments and share them at Planning and Housing Committee as well. And then for this site plan, the site plan is going to go even longer. So please do keep sharing comments that are more detail oriented relating to the site plan as well. So yes, I'll leave it at that. I did want to clarify. I did say I wasn't taking notes before. I am taking notes, but I don't have the ability to record your contact information or your name. So that's why I encourage you to submit those officially to me so I can put you on our notification list so you can keep updated with this and get notification of the next steps. Thanks.
Sorry, may I just ask, Kirsten, I don't know if you have an idea yet or if Jillian has an idea at this point. Is this like a June Planning and Housing Committee vote? Is that roughly the timeline?
Councillor, I'll be honest, we have new timelines with new legislation that have come in, so those are always a factor. Our processors are not quite in place for that, but
Yeah.
we are working to maintain legislative timelines, so that would put this definitely before the summer. And I do understand from the applicant team and the owner that this is something they want to keep moving forward to get going. So it's definitely something they want to see sooner than later.
Okay,
Yeah.
so this developer then, as Jemmy, I guess, is seeking to sort of hold you to some of those new legislative timelines to a reasonable extent then?
Yeah, to a reasonable extent, yes.
Okay, so a May deadline or a May meeting? Sorry, I know you don't want to commit to anything today, but I'm just trying to help people understand, how long they have to marshal the arguments and make sure that they, get those good cases in front of people and lobby politicians.
Yeah, we just sent our first round of comments today. There's a few things that need to be followed up on. So it really will end up being, how quickly can those items be resolved to a point where we want to move forward, or, how long it takes to resolve them, basically.
Okay.
So I'll let Lisa, I guess, do you have an idea, Lisa, of your timing?
No, I was just going to say exactly what it's with us now. The comments have come in from the city, and we have to specifically, I was just looking at them as we were talking about trees. There are some comments about some trees in there. So Jemmy hasn't seen them yet. We got them earlier today. We were preparing for tonight, so we didn't actually send them over yet. So we'll have to have a meeting with the team. There was questions about the location of the driveway and verifying some turning movements and stuff like that. So there is a ripple effect of accounting for some of that. So depending on how long it takes us to go through those comments and do a resubmission to the city, which will also be posted on DevApps, any new drawings we do submit, any updated reports do get circulated. So depending on how long it takes to resolve those, the process keeps moving forward. And we had internally sort of discussed a summer sort of planning committee as sort of where we thought this was headed.
Okay. I think we're probably on the same page then. And is it taking at the corner part of the discussion as well? Because that could be complicated.
Yeah, there is a comment on the site triangle. Yes. So we have to figure out how we can accommodate that in the design of the building.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate the clarity.
Awesome. Thank you, Kirsten and Jeff and Lisa for clarifying on the timelines for everyone. In that case, I don't see any other questions that slipped in there. So I'm going to wrap up for everyone tonight. I'll sort of make the last pitch of get your comments in, as soon as perhaps you possibly can to Kirsten. We've put the information for her and ourselves in the chat. And of course, if you missed that or you have trouble finding it, you can always email us at jeff.leeper@ottawa.ca and we'll be able to get that info to you quickly. If you know any neighbors who are interested in attending this discussion tonight and were unable to, I will be posting this YouTube. Honestly, it'll probably be uploaded and done by end of day tomorrow, but if you don't see it by next week, feel free to reach out. It'll be on the Kitchissippi Ward YouTube publicly, and it'll be up for your review the whole 2 hours if you'd like to sit down and go right through it. So So just keep an eye out for that if that's something you're interested in or a neighbor you know might be interested in. Otherwise, Jeff, unless you have any closing comments.
No,
All right.
thank you very much, Steph. I appreciate your, as usual, excellent moderation, and thank you very much to the development team, and certainly thank you to residents and the BIA for coming out. I heard some really good food for thought this evening. I tend again to be on the side of supporting this development, just given the direction in which our official plan has gone. But some food for thought on some of the specifics raised this evening that I'll want to follow up with staff and the developer further about over the next few days. So thank you for that, and thank you for your engagement as always.
Thanks, everyone. You have a lovely evening.
Happy New Year, everyone. I can still
Happy
say
New
it.
Year.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.